Hi there, you're listening to the Estranged Heart podcast, and I'm your host, Kreed Revere. Welcome back to our returning listeners, and if this is your first time here, thank you for selecting this podcast to listen to. As we begin today's episode, I invite you to grab a cup of coffee or tea, settle in, and listen with an open heart. But first, the regular disclaimer. I am not a licensed therapist or counselor. Nothing within this podcast should be considered or taken as therapy. If you are in need of therapeutic support such as counseling, please seek out a therapist near you. Hi there. Today's episode is an interview with an estranged mom. And as we begin this new year, I'm hopeful that this interview will provide some hope for other estranged moms, other estranged parents, and in a way that doesn't lead to reconciliation, or a way that doesn't come by reconciliation. This mom has been estranged for 8 years, almost 9 years, with her estranged adult daughter, her only child, and has come to a place where she has inner peace regarding her estrangement. And after the discovery of a mental health illness for herself, and years of therapy and really digging in and working on her traumas, she has come to a place where she can view estrangement as a gift. And I know that for a lot of moms, especially those who are in the throes of a recent estrangement or one that is, fairly new, it's impossible to see that right now. I get that. This mom gets that as well. One of the interesting pieces of this conversation with this mom was that both of us have arrived in a very similar spot with self as a direct result of the estrangement. And while I have reconciled, she has not. And yet we've both arrived at this place in our lives where we can be grateful for the estrangement experience and where it has brought us to on our paths and the lessons we have learned. So I know that it's really, like I said, really difficult to see and hear that and understand that in the beginning throes of estrangement. However, digging in and working on our own things can bring us to a place of peace regardless of what the outcome is. And I think that if there's one takeaway from today's interview, it would be that. So I invite you to listen with an open heart, and listen to this mom's story and how she has arrived at the place where she is at today. A couple of quotes to get us started. The first is, "Don't shut down your emotions. Embrace them. Your emotions are your internal compass telling you whether or not you are on track. Use them to help cultivate your passions or motivate you to change situations and circumstances that hold you back from achieving your goals." And that is by Jillian Michaels. And the second is, "You take your power back by being responsible for your life." And that is by Unknown. On to today's episode. Okay. All right. So, Donna, thanks for today. Thanks for reaching out and really being open to sharing your story. And I'm super excited to hear about your story. You're a member of my support group, and
the things that you post are just amazing and thoughtful and considerate and supportive and directive in helping moms to move through, which is what the whole group is about, right? To move through the pain instead of getting stuck in the pain. So I for one am super grateful for that, and thank you for being a part of the group.
Thank you. Thank you for
Absolutely.
saying that.
Of course. So let's kind of dive in and talk about your story. Do you mind kind of letting me know what your story is, kind of where it started?
Okay. Well, we've never talked before except writing on your wonderful Facebook page that I'm so impressed with.
Thank you.
And I keep coming back to it because most Facebook pages don't have enough boundaries to keep everyone safe.
Right.
You know, because most people don't know exactly, boundaries that are healthy for them and others. So yeah. So that's how I met you. And so my story, well, so I'm getting closer to 70. So I'm in between 65, 70.
Okay.
So I'm no longer working professionally. And so I around the age of 55, I went out on disability.
Okay.
And I've worked in psych. And so I have a bachelor's and a master's in social work, and I was doing a lot of crisis work. I also had a license, so I worked in psych facilities, and I did some nursing and things of that nature. So I have kind of a different background. So, so I had like a situational stressor on the job, and I got terminated unexpectedly after I had gotten my master's. And I didn't take that very well because that was not on my to-do list. So I had all of a sudden I was 39. So all of a sudden in my life, I was having trouble concentrating, trouble sleeping. I was just lots of anxiety. I was very upset. So I went to a psychiatrist who I worked with, and I liked him a lot and felt a good degree of trust. And so, of course, if you go to a psychiatrist, you're probably going to get a diagnosis.
Right.
So that's what I got. And so he prescribed medications for me. And I don't know what I was thinking, but that wasn't in my plan. But we talked, and he also sent me to a psychologist. And between both of them, they're like, you need the medication. And so all of a sudden, this is after like 9-10 years of going to college and working basically full time. And I had my daughter part-time. I got put on all these meds. And so instead of me being, the counselor, the social worker, the medication nurse, I was the one getting treatment. So it changed my life. And so I was actually on the medication for 16 years. And so I reached around 54, 55, and I was in a relationship, and the relationship was going south. And so I found a psychotherapist, and she happened to be trained in mindfulness. And I knew what mindfulness was. It was just, it wasn't well known at that point. And I was working again. And so I definitely called her, and she happened to be a Zen psychotherapist with like an expertise in mindfulness and meditation. So I started working with her. Hopefully I don't skip around too much, but I decided to get off the medications after 16 years because they had taken a very harsh toll on me. And so I safely got off the medications, and I titrated myself off as I would have done for anyone as a psych tech nurse.
Right.
So, and I continued to work with that psychotherapist for 5 years, and she moved out of the area, and I needed something else, right? And so I was referred to a new psychotherapist who had an expertise in EMDR and trauma.
Okay.
And so right when I started working with her, just at the very, very beginning, she suggested that I ask my daughter to come in. And so I asked my daughter to come into therapy with me, and she said no. And at about the same time, she called me and said, "Mom, I need to tell you something. I think you need to sit down." And I just kind of like, "Oh, sure," And she told me that she had moved. And I said, "What do you mean you moved?" She was like, "Yeah, I moved to the Midwest." I'll keep that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And also her dad moved with she and her husband and her daughters. So my ex sold his home and moved with them. And I just was like, I was like, why?
Right.
Well, I had no idea. So I was completely shocked. And then she said to me that she was getting off of social media. I said, okay, I get that. But what she didn't say to me was that was going to be the last time that she would talk to me, and that she would block me, because she actually did not get off of social media. I eventually found her on social media, and I did not reach out to her because I felt that, that it definitely is her right. And you can't force someone to talk with you.
Right.
So I continued to work in psychotherapy, and I also did something called neurofeedback. I did neurofeedback, and I did some EMDR. I did more neurofeedback than EMDR, and of course, just having the support of psychotherapy.
Right.
So I did like 12 years altogether. And I've recently graduated out. And so it's been 8 years since my daughter has spoken to me. There's been absolutely no contact, no email, no phone calls, no texting, nothing. And in that, I lost contact with my ex-husband, which that's okay. But I do have 2 granddaughters and no contact from them. So I guess I wanted to share my story because I'm coming at this from a person who has had mental illness, whatever you want to call it. I have a pretty severe trauma history. And I was kind of like the last one to know it. And so I'm at a really good place now. And I'm very, happy and proud of myself for all the work I've done. And I absolutely feel like if there's one thing left for me to do in my life, it would be to be able to reconcile with my daughter. And so I thought that maybe this will be helpful for me, and maybe my story would be helpful for others. And
thank you. Thanks for sharing that. I know how much vulnerability it takes to show up and share your story, especially on a platform like this. So I thank you for that. Is it okay for me to ask you some questions regarding?
oh, absolutely.
Not anything specific. We will keep your daughter's identity. I mean, none of that will be revealed, but I know that the listeners of the podcast would probably have some questions, right, regarding
Absolutely.
your relationship with your daughter. So number one, is she your only child?
She is my only child.
Okay.
And I think she's 43.
Okay. So this happens in her mid-30s ish, somewhere
Right.
around there. Okay. What was your relationship like with her before that phone call? What type of a relationship did you have? Were you close? Were you were there traumas that you are now aware of that you weren't aware of as she was growing up? Those kinds of questions.
Yeah, well, I certainly was aware of my history of what had happened to me, but I didn't know totality how it had affected me,
Right.
because we all do the best we can do.
Yep.
So I got married and I had her at 23. But there was something that I wasn't talking about at that point in my life. And this was the late 70s. And I actually was a lesbian, and I was hiding it. I thought I could change. I
Right.
had this sexual attraction to her father. And we weren't even the ones that talked about getting married. I had wanted to be baptized, and I mentioned it to her dad, and he had a friend that said he knew a minister. So he and I went to a minister in order so I could be baptized. And the minister is like, "Are you two having sex?" And we're like, "Yeah." And the minister's like, "Well, you need to get married." And at that point in my life, I had not thought about it. I just needed, he was really safe. He had a stable job. He was older than me, right? He had all the trappings of that for me. And so don't ask me why. It was a mistake for both of us to have gotten married. And so I got pregnant within the first year. And so that wasn't a bad thing. But again, I wasn't listening to who I was inside.
Right.
So there definitely were some red flags, and it was harder to come out at that point in life. It wasn't being lesbian was not accepted the way it is today.
Right.
Oh my gosh. And so I think I stayed married for 7 years. And of course, I met someone. And so it was very, very difficult. So that's definitely a trauma for my daughter.
Yeah.
And her, like I said, her dad was stable as far as employment, had the house.
Mm-hmm.
So he had, achieved all of those, first half of life goals that we all want to. So I left, and I took her at first, and then I took her back because it was just impossible. It was in her best interest to stay with him.
Mm-hmm.
And so at least one other time in my life, I've asked her to come to therapy and to work it out. And of course, I realize now that no one can work on any issue until they're ready.
Right.
It has to be their idea. So, so over the years, I had my daughter during the summer, and he had her during the school year. And we didn't live in the same town, the same city anymore. And for junior high, I had her the first year of high school and junior high, I had her full time, and he had her during the summers. So, but there, I want to say that being a lesbian is not easy. Having relationships and I had too many relationships, and they did not end cordially.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things that I have been able to look at since she walked out of my life. And I realize, that as I dealt with my childhood traumas, I realized that she has her own. And
Right. Right. Has she expressed to you before, when you were in communication with one another, that specific things that she either blamed you for, or was not, you should have done this differently, or this affected me, this, impacted my life in these ways? Did she ever express those things to you?
no,
Okay.
no, just like her dad never raised his voice. So she kind of has more of his style
Mm-hmm.
Of relating. So there's like no confrontation, no getting things out on the table and talking.
Okay. Pretty non-confrontational type person.
Right.
Her. Okay. Yeah. So she makes this decision to move. Did she happen to tell you it at all in that conversation why she?
Well, I'm in California, and they were in California, not in the city I live in. And they were disappointed in the values. Her husband always made it clear that in his view, being a lesbian was a sin. One time he got out the Bible,
Okay.
and read it to me.
Mm.
And I just said, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I don't agree, or
Right.
So they wanted a different type of life, and his mother is back there.
Okay.
So they moved. They're all like living like in the same row of homes. So
Okay. So this is and please correct me if I'm wrong, that this is more than likely a difference of, for them, values, maybe? Is that what
yes.
you think that maybe might be the foundation of the reason for the
Definitely. I also, yes, I also wanted to talk about disassociation.
Okay.
Okay. So this is what I did not know. And as over the years, getting education and also working as a professional, and I never really understood disassociation. And whenever I tried to read about it, it was like so dry.
Right.
I did not follow it. So when I got with the trauma therapist 5 years ago, 6 years ago, it wasn't so long into maybe the first year, she let me know that I disassociated. And I was like, really?
What are you talking
I was like, I had like no idea. None. And so I had to think about it. And so it's like, because there were times in my life when I would be upset, and I would call it a trigger now. And I would like go buy a pack of cigarettes or go get a bottle of wine or a large beer, right?
Right.
And I even called it a therapeutic drunk. And then I'd be really upset, and then I would have to drink, smoke cigarettes, whatever, or talk to somebody, and then I would settle down, but not right away, right? So it was like that part would rise up, and then I would be a different person in a way. And so I was at my daughter's home for Thanksgiving, and his family were there, which I did not feel close or akin to at all. I mean, nada.
Right.
And so I was like in a room full of strangers, and and I experienced a trigger. I got upset over something my daughter said, which was, I couldn't have predicted it in a million years. And what she said was, she said to one of the adults with children, you can take the leftovers home. And I just was like, I was going to make soup. And she was just like, and I popped a cork inside of me. And I went into, how they fight, flight, freeze. I went into flight, and I was like, I have to leave. I'm leaving. And she tried talking to me. Nope. And then her husband was, and I just, he wouldn't leave me alone. And I was so upset. And I was upset I just was so confused and upset. And he walked me out, and he's like, you're going to regret this. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm like, because I was mad, right?
Right.
And that's the last time I saw her.
And how long was the distance between that and the phone call?
No, 6 months, a year.
Okay.
Yeah. I was busy doing my thing. My daughter and I, we would have, you know, like a weekly phone call
Mhm.
to, and it was, our communication was really good. You know, so she never really supported me because as I got off the psych meds, I think she thought I was nuts for getting off the psych meds.
Right.
And, you know, I didn't need anybody's permission. And I did it. And it was the best thing I've ever done for myself.
Right.
And so I've had 12 years off of psych meds. And really have been able to work on myself. So, so I really didn't understand that I had parts. So my parts inside of me were not talking to each other. They were not aware of each other.
Mm-hmm.
So that could cause me some difficulty. And so it did over my lifetime going into the rage. Was kind of an out of controlness. It was an out of controlness. And so I would like to be able to share this with my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And I've written, but I have no idea if she's ever
Read it.
opened an email.
Right.
Yeah. So I just wanted to explain that, and and that there is treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And disassociation is kind of like a superpower because it allows you to survive.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then at some point in your life, it can be a big problem.
Right. Right. And I want to stress for people who are not, most everyone knows I'm of the psych world because of the jobs that I hold, and I mean things like that. I'm not a therapist, however, I live in that world. Those are the people that are in my world, so I have a little broader understanding and of traumas and things like that. So I think it's important for folks to understand that this disassociation comes from, oftentimes, from that trauma, the different types of trauma, and it can be all sorts of traumas, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be, as I talk on the podcast often, it doesn't necessarily have to be, war and genocide. There are, if I can go there are wars and genocide that happen within us, within our spirits, within our family units and things like that, that can cause these traumas that happen to us that then cause disassociation and things. I think it's easier for folks to maybe understand it from the perspective that it can change a person's behavior because they're in the fight, the flight, the freeze modes of not knowing what to do when the triggers happen, when we're brought back to a trauma, and it's these subconscious things that are happening to us because we're not aware of them, right? Because we've disassociated. It's the body's way of, as you said, helping you to survive something that is not quote unquote survivable, right? It is so I mean, it's so traumatizing to us, and whatever that is, and what's traumatizing can be traumatizing to me might not necessarily be traumatizing to you, right? Those types of things. So I think it's important for folks to understand when we're talking about in this conversation about disassociation, that for you, that's where that came from, was trauma from that you experienced in your life, in childhood or after childhood kind of thing. So this is what happens, and can lead.
It's quite common. It is. I think it's common enough that we can talk about it safely and not scare ourselves or other people. Because mindfulness is all about being here now
Right.
and being in the present, the presence, the present. So trauma is such a wound that it keeps us stuck in the past
Right.
to the degree it interferes with the present,
Right.
and also fearful about the future.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I live life and who I am today after 12 years of therapy is significantly different.
Right.
And this, I can't even explain it. But I have lots of peace, lots of joy. I'm going to sound like a space ager, but I really can enjoy, going for a walk. Whereas before, there was like an underlining anxiety
Mm-hmm.
that I lived with all the time. And now I just like let things be. I have much more confidence and ability. It's a whole, so therapy for me has kind of restored me, given me an authenticity that I didn't have before.
Mm.
And so of course, I'm going to want to have a relationship with my daughter because she's a fantastic person. And I really crave deeply, that to be able to put that relationship back together.
Right.
And yeah.
But to put that
So-
relationship back together in new and healthy ways compared to the way that it was in the past.
Yes. Because I was not horrible. But there definitely were some wild
Mhm.
times that I would not want any child. No adult should experience,
Right.
and certainly no child. So I feel like I can own in what happened, and I feel like her husband is protective,
Mm-hmm.
and I understand that. So I have guilt, I have shame,
Mm-hmm.
but I also think I have a voice now, and I can stay here and carry on a conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful work. Hard and challenging work. It's not an easy journey. I haven't met a person yet that has gone through intensive therapy for years and has really worked to do that deep inner work that has said, oh yeah, it was a breeze and it was so fun. It's quite the opposite, right? If it was anything like mine, you're like, oh my goodness.
It is really the hardest work you can ever do.
Yeah, it absolutely is. But it has brought you to a place where you, as you have said, you have found an inner peace for yourself, which is so, so important, that then you can also, as much as you want to have a relationship and reconcile with your daughter, you can also respect and hold space that she's where she's at. And that for now means that there's no contact between the two of you, right?
Right.
And talk about holding two opposites, right? But I want this. I want to have a relationship with you, and still hold this space of, I recognize you don't want a relationship with me right now.
Right.
And I'm going to hold space for that, right, to happen. So immense courage, and doing what I call the big brave work, right, is to dive in to our own stuff. And
you have to, it's helpful to hold. I know I definitely could be incorrect. I could have made up this story and that not be her her issue with me at all, but
Mhm.
you know, I'm imagining I'm somewhat right.
Mhm.
And so, and she had, you know, my granddaughters, I think, are about 19 and 15 now.
Okay.
And I probably wouldn't have wanted, I have a couple of siblings, and my younger brother, he would call me crazy aunt. I have one nephew, crazy. I was crazy Aunt Donna. He
Mm.
always called me crazy. And I never understood,
Mhm.
I was all, just being funny. But it was hurtful, and I didn't understand it. But now that I'm much more integrated
Mhm.
and healed from my childhood, I understand why I looked and acted the way I did. But I can't force myself on anyone.
Right. Right.
So
Exactly. I let me ask you this, Donna, and I mean, I know it's, oh my gosh, it sounds kind of cheesy, but I really, if your daughter were to be ever listen to this podcast episode, what would you want to tell her right in this moment today?
well, I definitely would apologize. And I'm so sorry I can't make it right. Um, but the only way I can make it right is by letting her know what I found out, what has happened, and how sorry I am. Because I think that's about the only way I can make it right. Like, hey, I'm not crazy, and this is why, because I'm sure that would be kind of scary.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, um, I really think that it would take time for her also to, like, one conversation wouldn't be enough.
Right. Of course.
And yeah, and then you have to build a whole new relationship, whole new trust,
Mhm.
and there would have to be some degree of forgiveness and understanding.
Right.
And
Right. And that, she, as you've mentioned before, we've talked about, she has to be ready. And she might not be ready now. She might be ready later. And then again, she might not ever be ready. And
right.
for us as moms who are or have been estranged, it's really super important that we get to this place of acceptance with that. And I think that a lot of moms misunderstand me when I say that. It's not an easy task at all. It's not like somebody just comes in and flips a switch and you're like, okay, I'm good with this now. Like, that's not how this works. It's by doing your own inner work, figuring out who you are, learning more about yourself, those types of things that allow you to get to this space where you can then be okay with where things are at in your life now, as you said, in the present, right? And being
Right.
okay doesn't mean necessarily that you're up jumping for joy and thinking that life is, all a bed of roses, but that
Right.
it's okay. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to survive, and I'm going to live, and I am going to have joy in my life again. Might not necessarily be with my child right now or my grandchildren right now, but I can find joy in other areas, as you talked about. And I know that you talk often about walking in nature and finding joy in those moments.
And I have a couple of younger women around my daughter's age that I'm close to, and that brings me a lot of joy.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I find relationships with others, friendships.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not in a relationship. I haven't had a relationship for 10, 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm really happy I'm okay with just being with me,
Mm-hmm.
being my own best friend.
Right.
And then I have a a spiritual practice that's really deep. I read in the Course in Miracles once a week with a small group of close friends online. And so I had to develop other areas of my life. Otherwise I would have gone nuts. I wouldn't be here today. So, I think walking, and I take lots of photos of flowers, not so much right now, but even so, we have plenty of flowers in California. I do book studies, and so that's that's kind of like my passion, is just to have small groups and to read together. We take turns reading and then discussing the material, and I find it really satisfying.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And what a gift to yourself, and in some way a gift to your daughter, whether she recognizes that right now or not, that you are walking this path, and can show her when the day comes that she's ready to be open to that this too is possible for her in all sorts of ways, right? Because none of us are completely, I haven't met, I will put it this way, I haven't met someone that is completely happy with all aspects of their life and have no turmoil or dissatisfaction at all. And so when we can demonstrate how to work through those rough times and then continue on to live a life of purpose and joy, regardless of the ups and downs and the way that life ebbs and flows.
Right. Yeah. Because we can't control everything. We control very little, but what we can control is our attitude about life, to let it be. And I used to have so much anger and rage. I left a lot of marks on the street with peeling out. And I'm still trying to teach myself not to flip people off in the car. It's like, oh, so patterns behavior is really hard not to unlearn, to reprogram, rewire it's not easy.
No, it's not. It is not. I have to tell you, the vehicle on the road seems to be
Right.
for a lot of us, myself included. So,
right.
Yeah, it's my place where I get the buttons pushed a lot. So yes, I hear you. Oh my gosh, that's great. Well, as we wind things down here, Donna, is there any words of advice, wisdom that you could pass along to estranged moms who are not in communication with their children right now, that you feel could be beneficial or helpful?
Yeah. Well, for me, birthdays and holidays are the hardest.
Yeah.
But unpredictably, like it's not consistent. Like sometimes if I'm with a group of friends, I'm okay. And other times it's like I have too much time on my hands and it's harder. Right. So I find it to be like waves of energy, waves of memory, waves of sadness. And so let it be. I have a yoga mat, and going to the yoga mat and sitting there and letting the sadness come and be, accepting it, respecting it, honoring it. And then I'll journal. I do longhand, hard copy, but most of the time it's typing because I can type fast.
Right.
and I get it out. So, and also I write bad poetry sometimes. And so I have to express it.
Yeah.
I can't ignore it. It will not go away. The thoughts, the thoughts are not always true. Some of my thoughts are, the mind is just the mind. It creates thoughts. And some of those thoughts are crazy and not helpful.
Right.
So I can say that most of the time now, it's a helpful thought, or that's not true. I can laugh at myself, and I'm just like, oh, hell no.
Right.
Not going there.
Right.
Oh, no. And so there's some degree of discipline, learning to exercise that muscle of awareness of the observer and knowing that not all thoughts are true.
Right.
And feelings just happen to us. It's like standing in the ocean and the waves pass. And some feelings try to knock us down. They're so strong, like a strong wave. Well, you turn to your side and bend or bend down into the wave. And so you're just like, oh, isn't that interesting? Your word of curiosity is a mindfulness. And so it's just like, isn't that interesting? And so feelings are like clouds. Clouds pass. They just pass by. Some of them are white, some of them are dark gray. And then sometimes they gather and make a storm. But always behind the storm is the blue sky.
Right. Beautiful.
And the sun is always there.
Yep.
So you just have to wait and it will pass. And so I have some core foundational beliefs that are always there for me. Inside of me is a refuge. So my heart is for me. And so I go within and I remember, I can choose what I attach to. And I don't want to attach to the crazy thoughts or the unhelpful thoughts or the thoughts that are unkind. I don't need those thoughts. And I can say, thank you, but I like these over here. And so I literally can spend more time and energy with the thoughts that are helpful.
Yeah.
So it's a practice. And the more you do it, it's like lifting weights. The more you lift the weights, the easier it gets and the stronger, and you can put on more weights.
Right.
So I've learned a lot to be able to get through the difficult times. And I don't drink anymore. And that drinking's not helpful. And so harmful behaviors are not helpful, and it will just keep the difficultness longer.
Right.
So you literally turn to it, welcome it and honor it, feel it, hear it, just observe it. It's not who you are. It's just a temporary state passing through.
Right. For those moms who are not or might not be aware of all of these practices that you do, and that there's lots of those that I do for myself, would it be a fair statement to say that before your therapy and doing the inner work that you would not have been able to have done the things
I was not able to do this at all. No, it was that Zen psychotherapist that taught me meditation, and I really wasn't able to take it all in until I started working on the trauma and doing neurofeedback.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm 12 years of hard work.
Right.
So it doesn't come overnight. It's a practice.
Right.
And so you have to, and it's never perfect because there's always challenges.
Right. And we're always learning and growing and changing. And so what worked for us 5 years ago might not work for us today. I mean, I know that has been a reoccurring theme in my life. And that's again why curiosity is so important to me. Because I get to a place in my life where like, this is not working. Why is this not working anymore? This has always worked. Why am I having this struggle now? And so then I dive into it and I find out, oh, this is why it's not working. So what else can I do to do something different to make it work again?
Yes, like your tool belt continues to grow.
Exactly.
You get a new favorite tool.
Right. Exactly. So learning, being curious, learning, having a willingness to look within and a willingness to do it different, really are huge parts of being able to move through the pain instead of getting stuck in it.
Yes, flexibility.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it feels like it's going to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
It
absolutely.
It really does.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing worse. And that's when you do something to release it.
Right.
You just, paint, color. I what was it? I'm like in my 60s and I started coloring.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? They have like really cool pens.
Yes.
I mean, it's like not just a box of crayons anymore. Right. There's like cool pens. You can get 64, you can get 120 or whatever. And all the colors. Oh my God.
Yes.
And it's a lot of fun to see. And that it is self-soothing.
Right.
And so one thing I will throw out before we end, but is there's an 8-week course, mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR. So when the kind of the young people hippies, they went off and learned Buddhism, a little bit older than me, and then they came back to the States. And then John Kabat-Zinn developed mindfulness-based stress reduction, an 8-week course. And it's taught all around the world now, but especially in the United States. You can take it online, you can take it in person. That was life-changing for me because it gave me a lot of new tools.
Right. Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And there's so many tools out there if we're just curious enough to be, Google can be your best friend. Google is one of my best friends. And that's how I find a whole host of things that I would never know about in this world.
So estrangement's a wake-up call. It's an opportunity.
Absolutely. And I know that when you're in the middle of it, especially in the beginning, you are like, this is not this is not, I went through all of that. I very clearly remember, I don't know that I've ever talked about this on the podcast. I had a moment, I was living with friends in their basement apartment, and one of my daughters had sent just a horrific email to me in the very beginning part of my estrangement. And I remember running up the stairs, falling at the top of the stairs into this heap and just sobbing like I had never sobbed before. And at that point in time, for someone to have come to me and said, "Oh, but this is a gift." I would have told them to go, do things that were impossible. Because that is not how I felt.
Right.
However, at some point I got to that place where it was like, I can no longer live like this. This is this is not working for me. I want to live. I want to have a life that is not
Yes.
full of this pain and sadness and tears and sobbing and all of these things. And then got curious, and then, you know, things move on. And then when you have done that work and you can come out on this other side, be it reconciled or not, as you have proven, right? I have reconciled, you have not. Both of us have come to this place where we can see that this estrangement is a gift.
Right.
It's really a gift for us for me to discover who I am, and to know that who I am and all of who I am is okay. Right. But I had to do all of that other icky stuff and delve into all of those things that I never wanted to look at before I could get to this place, as you have done the same.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Donna.
Well, thank you. It was wonderful meeting you.
Yeah, absolutely, for sharing your story today and being willing to be on the podcast. I thank you for being a member of the support group. You bring that warm, compassionate peace to the group, and I want to thank you for that. I really do.
Thank you for having such a fantastic group.
Wow. Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. It's most of us don't get very far in life alone. It takes a village, as I say, right?
It does.
Help us to grow and change and evolve. And so thank you for being one of those people for us. Ooh.
All right. Thank you, Kreed.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Take care of yourself, and we'll be in touch.
I will. Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. This brings this episode to a close. I hope that this time together was time you feel well spent, and that you are able to find some takeaway nuggets to help you on your journey, wherever you may be on your estrangement and reconciliation path. If you feel you've received something helpful or positive from this podcast, please consider following us, sharing this podcast with others, leaving a positive review, perhaps entertaining becoming a guest on our show, or following us on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok under the same name, The Estranged Heart. As a reminder, there is an online support group on Facebook. If you are a estranged mom who identifies as being spiritual and approaches estrangement with a sense of curiosity rather than blame and judgment, and desire to do inner self-work and reflection, please seek us out. We can be found at facebook.com/estranged mothers support group. And lastly, if you are an estranged parent or an estranged adult child and would like to have your story shared on the podcast, anonymously or not, please reach out to me via email at theestrangedheart@gmail.com.